Well, welcome back. It's me again, Alex William Smith, aka Jonathan Royal. The broadcast got lost. It's not even uploaded the high quality video. However, I'm back. I'm going to finish things off. If you are just watching this video now, just joining us, then you really will want to watch video number 1, which is below this video on this page or on this Facebook group or on this group or whatever. It's below it, and hopefully, if I can get these to download, because I think there's some weird jiggery pokery going on here, I've never had this happen before. If I'm able to get the videos downloaded, I will also get them onto YouTube, and I will post the links within the next half hour or so. But the video part 1, media, hypnosis, brainwashing and social engineering, should be below this one, but obviously don't watch it yet. But after this video, if you're just joining us now or you join partway through this video, you will want to look at the full section, part 1, underneath this video on this page or on this group. You'll want to see the full part, and you'll want a notepad and pen to take details of the dates, times, places, the names I mention, and the phrases I say that you should search on Google to prove to yourself that everything I've said is true, as it were, okay? So, I ended the last broadcast by saying that you should take a look at www.untoldmurder.com and familiarise yourself with the most investigated murder in British history, yet the least reported in the mainstream media, namely that of Daniel Morgan, and discover for yourself the links that some newspaper organisations have got to having tried to disrupt previous investigations into that murder, which is all very strange. So, that video number 1 below this was basically just to set out to you that I'm not just some random nutter. Some of you might still think I'm a nutter, that's fine, you're allowed to. But I am somebody who's worked in show business and performed in show business from the age of 3 and a bit. And this August the 13th, 2016, I turned 41 years of age. So I've been on this planet quite a while. I performed in all areas of show business. I've learnt the tricks of the trade of magicians and conjurers, of psychics and clairvoyants, of spiritual healers, of hypnotists, of even your street hustlers and conmen. I've infiltrated them all. I've worked in those arenas. I've seen it from the inside. When it comes to journalism, I can honestly tell you that in the 90s, not only did I, for a period of years, fabricate stories, more ridiculous the better, and get them on television and on the radio and into newspapers and magazines both in England and around the world, to show that they have very little regard for the truth and will print and broadcast just about anything, okay? But I also worked as a freelance journalist and an investigative journalist as well. And during that time, I can't say too much about it now, I do mention stuff to a degree in my autobiography available on Amazon.com, Confessions of a Psychic Hypnotist, but I'll be going into way more depth when I finally do release a book, probably in 2017. Hopefully some point in 2017 the legal proceedings I mentioned that prohibit me from mentioning too much will have concluded, and then I'll be able to release a book telling you what went on during my time as a journalist and working as an investigative journalist, which meant I've had other interactions with the News of the World, for example, okay? I supplied them other stories in the past, some true and that were helping the public, and some that were just basically no basis in truth, and anyone who bothered to investigate them just a bit would have known that. I've proven from the inside what a load of cobblers the media can be, and that is why when I tell you to please, you know, if you're just joining this now, then when we finish this broadcast in about 15-20 minutes, you'll want to watch the first video, the video below this one, and you'll want to have a notepad and pen to take notes of the dates, places and times I mention, and also the key phrases I say to search on Google to independently prove to yourself that everything I've said in that previous video is actually true and cast iron fact. Because when you realise it's true and cast iron fact, and when you realise I've lived this from the inside, okay, that I've actually worked as a journalist, I've been on the inside, I've had dealings with more journalists than soft make, and I've actually tried going back and provably going back 19, fast approaching 20 years ago now, to expose the unethical, immoral, and sometimes even illegal techniques used by various journalists and newspapers and media outlets, then you'll realise that I'm talking truth from the inside. I've experienced this firsthand. It's not just some conspiracy theory. Okay? So, with that in mind, I would encourage you, when you've done that, and then you think, everything he said was true, and it does raise a lot of questions. And in particular, the news organisation I referred to a lot in the first video is owned by Rupert Murdoch. But then do some investigation and search the sort of phrase such as, what percentage of the world media does Rupert Murdoch own and control? And it's quite eye-opening. It involves television, newspapers, magazines, radio stations, even internet channels and stuff. And then, for example, search on Google Rupert Murdoch oil investments and have a look. Maybe type in Golan Heights and see where they are, see who's invested, and then ask yourself why. Well, what a coincidence it must be that a media mogul with investments in a company involved in oil in a place that at the time's not allowed to get to the oil kind of thing, might, through their media outlets, manipulate the public opinion so the public would agree or at least be less resistant to the idea of airstrikes against certain countries, for example. And then you start to see, well, yeah, isn't it a strange coincidence that the outcome of elections and voting often is what favours those who financially stand to make most money out of it, and quite often that can be people who own media. So do some research for yourself. Honestly, I'm not going to give you all the leads, you've got to search for yourself, but start off by looking, for example, at the phrase, what percentage of the world media does Rupert Murdoch own? And then you might want to, I've got some other key phrases here that are really good, are really eye-opening if you search them on Google. If you search the phrase 6, that's the number 6, Jewish, Jewish, companies control 96% of the world media. Let me make it quite clear. I have nothing against Jewish people. The vast majority of Jewish people are actually of very average income, incredibly nice, wonderful people. I've had, managers who are Jewish. It's nothing like that, so don't start thinking, he's attacking a race of people. No, I'm not. I'm just saying, search the phrase, 6 Jewish companies control 96% of the world's media on Google, and look at what media around the world, television, radio, newspapers, magazines, internet channels, are actually owned by just 6 Jewish-controlled companies. And also, forget that element, just think that it's actually just 6 companies. Just 6 companies control 96% of the world media. And that other 4% is made up, that other 4% includes all the alternative media, okay, and all the stuff that's on the internet. So 96% is the vast majority of normal media, normal TV, radio, newspapers and magazines. Internet stuff and alternative media will probably fall in the 4% sector. Do some research on that yourself on Google. I encourage you to do that. Don't take my word for it. Another phrase I would encourage you to type into Google is, and I want to read this exactly because then I know you'll end up getting the exact same results that I did, as it were. Is tap into Google the phrase complete list of banks, as in BANKS, banks as in money institutes, so complete list of banks owned or controlled by the Rothschild family. And that's spelled ROTHSCHILD. So the phrase to search is complete list of banks owned or controlled by the Rothschild family. Have a look at that. See what you find on the first page of Google. Maybe dig a bit deeper as well. While you're at it, just check out the names J.P. Morgan and also the name Rockefeller, Rockefeller. Just do a bit of a Google search on them. And when you've done that, start to piece it into everything I've said in the first video before, and you'll start to see that, isn't it something of a coincidence that the vast majority of the financial institutes and main world banks around the world are run by a tiny number of rich, powerful families, and that the vast majority of the media are run by a tiny group of powerful families, and that if you then do a bit more digging, you can see how quite often the small group of media families and the small group of banking or financial institute families, if you do your research, you can see they've got links, and they quite often have mutual interests and motivations for creating an agenda. So, you know, let's just say at random, let's say if you were typing Rupert Murdoch oil investments, Gollum Heights, and you were to find that a media mogul who controls much of the media actually had or stood to gain financially from the outcome that could occur by there being airstrikes on certain countries, then it would be not too much of a jump, would it, to think that it could have been a motivating factor in why Murdoch's media reported so heavily on such things in a manner that was heavily towards brainwashing the general public to either be on the side of and encouraging such airstrikes, or at least desensitising them to it so they wouldn't put up as much of a resistance or a fuss when it did happen, and they would think it was happening for their own best interest and to protect their country and so forth, when in truth you look deeper, apply Occam's razor to the situation and ask yourself, who stands to benefit most from the outcome of this? And when you do that, and bear in mind that most of the world's media, 96% of the world's media is owned by 6 main companies, okay, and the vast majority of the banking institutes are owned by just a few select families, and these tend to have links together, you start to see that maybe it's not governments that control this world. Maybe governments do what they're told. Just maybe. I can't say this is a fact. Look on Google for yourself the stuff I've said, and in the other video, and come to your own conclusions. Maybe it's not just a massive coincidence that the media report stuff that will end up being helping what the governments tend to say they want, for example, which when you look at it will end up ultimately benefiting whom? Well, look into it and you see it's big companies, and it's all about, quite often all about oil and land. And when you do your research and you find that a lot of the banking families have funded both sides of all wars in history, both sides, okay, so they've profited from both sides, and that the media has manipulated stuff as well, then you start to think, you know what, you should never trust anything you see on television, hear on the radio, see in newspapers, or read in magazines without first independently verifying it yourself from at least 1 or 2 mainstream sources and at least 1 or 2 alternative media or internet sources, and then piecing it together, looking at it and asking yourself the question, who stands to benefit most from the outcome of this? And that will tend to point you in the direction of who's behind it being portrayed that way in the media, and why governments truly want the public to think in certain ways and whatnot. Look, if voting truly meant anything of any real note or worth, we wouldn't be allowed to do it. It's an illusion of truth. Have you never asked yourself, if you watch British Prime Minister's Question Time, okay, in the Houses of Parliament on television, and there might be video footage on YouTube, I don't know, But have you ever wondered how strange it is that when somebody asks a question from one side of the house, the person who's been asked that question stands up on the other side to answer it, but more often than not they read a script they've got in front of them. No, their notes. A prepared response. In other words, they knew the question in advance. It's a pantomime, it's a charade. But look, don't believe me. I want you to check for yourself. So here's the thing. I recommend a couple of books that you should read. And if especially if you're in the hypnosis industry, which is all about manipulating people's thought processes, then surely you owe it to yourself and your clients to ensure that you truly do understand how your thought processes are being manipulated every day by the media, by governments, and by social engineering. If you're going to flipping control other people in a positive intent to help them change their life, then you surely should understand it fully. So it's not just about hypnosis. You need to look at the way the whole social element of life is engineered and the way we're brainwashed and conditioned. Now, to start off with, 2 works of fiction to read. Yes, I'm recommending read works of fiction to learn facts. The first book I recommend you read is called Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. It was first published in 1922, and the work of fiction, the novel, is set in London in the year AD 2540. Okay, it's called Brave New World by Aldous, A-L-D-O-U-S, and then Huxley, H-U-X-L-E-Y. The second book you'd be wise to read is 1984. And even if you did read it at school like I did, read it again now as an adult in the context of what I've said here and in the context of what I say in the previous video to this. It's by George Orwell, that's G-E-O-R-G-E. Second name Orwell, O-R-W-E-L-L, and it was first published in 1949. Read them both. Bear in mind, Brave New World was published in 1922 and 1984 was published in 1949. Read them both and then ask yourself if you honestly still believe, when you've read them, that it's just a major coincidence that so many things that are stated would happen to the world in those books, such as loss of our freedoms, such as mass surveillance, CCTV cameras, even television sets in our houses being able to record conversations and stuff. This stuff's actually now happened and checkable. It's genuinely occurred. Is that just a coincidence? I don't think so. Especially not when you consider this. Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, taught for a short while George Orwell the subject of French at Eton Boys' School. Check this out for yourself. Now, Eton Boys' School. Search, I don't know, David Cameron, let's say, the former British Prime Minister who's just resigned. And search David Cameron, Eton Boys' School, or search politicians, Eton Boys' School. And maybe it's just a coincidence that so many people in positions of power, in governments, in politics, in key financial institutes and places, went to Eton Boys' School or similar institutes where Aldous Huxley previously taught. Put the pieces of the jigsaw together yourself. Perhaps, you see, it's a training ground for the elite to control the mass populace. Because, you know, normal school for the mass populace is not so much about education, it's about indoctrination and getting you used to obeying authority figures, teachers, getting you used to feeling that a sense of achievement in life is passing an exam and getting a piece of paper and getting a qualification that means that then you can proceed in life and get a job. They don't really spend that much time in the majority of schools actually telling you the truth that, you know what, the vast majority of millionaires and billionaires and mega successful people in the world have little, if any, real academic qualifications of any note or worth. Because that wouldn't fit in with the agenda of indoctrination. You must fit in with the system. We're taught from very young, you know, follow what police officers say, they're right, We're taught to fear courts and the justice system. Now that's good. There should be laws. Otherwise there would be total mania, madness and ridiculousness. But there is one law that would mean everyone was, if it was followed and implemented, everyone would be safe, happy. I know that's an impossible dream, but everyone would be safe and happy if the common law, the Magna Carta, if the Magna Carta common law was followed to the letter, then everyone would be safe and happy, because the key components are not to harm or injure anyone in any manner, physically, psychologically, spiritually or emotionally, not to rob anyone, not to do anyone any disservice. Common law, the Magna Carta, if you've not read up on it, type in Magna Carta, common law into Google, read it, study it, and you'll see that if that was enforced, then if everyone abided by it, which unfortunately they never will, because there are nasty people out there, unfortunately, but if they did, then everyone would be happy, everyone would be safe. Obviously that's an impossible dream, but it's just something to consider. And taking that the next step, another book I truly recommend you put on your reading list is called Freedom, Freedom. Freedom is more than just a 7-letter word. Written by a lady called Veronica Chapman. It's available on Amazon for next to nothing. In fact, if you type Freedom is more than a 7-letter word PDF, it is available actively as a free download. They encourage it because they want the information to get out there about how common law, how the public at large have been, well, secrets have been kept from you, if you like. They don't want you to know about common law. They don't want you to know about the actual rights that you do have. And let me tell you again, this is not something I'm just saying might work. This is something that I've tried in the real world for myself years ago, shortly after I was bankrupt, years and years and years ago. And also in more recent years, for some of my friends and some of my family, I have used the principles that are taught in Freedom is More Than a 7-Letter Word by the author Veronica Chapman, and they have worked 100% effectively, but the key is to do them exactly to the letter of the law as stated and mentioned in that book, which I recommend you read. And finally, remember, I'm just going to say one more time before we get to the questions and answers, that if you're just joining us, this is actually part 2 of this evening's broadcast. We lost it. So when this finishes, you'll probably want to watch video number 1 with a notepad and pen in hand, so you can write down the names, dates, places, facts and phrases that I tell you to search for on Google to independently verify the things that I tell you in video 1. Don't believe me. Don't believe anything you ever see on TV or hear on the radio or see in a newspaper or magazine without first checking it with at least 2 independent mainstream sources and at least 2 independent alternative media stroke internet sources, and then weighing it all up together and asking yourself the question, who stands to benefit most from this situation, which will often point in the direction of, are the media manipulating this? Are governments manipulating it? Is it the banking institutes manipulating it? Which all becomes even clearer in the context of what we said in video number 1. And namely that if you search phrases such as 6 Jewish companies control 96% of the world's media, search that in Google and have a look. It's nothing to do with them being controlled by Jewish people. It's more, that's a coincidence maybe. It's the fact that 6 companies, just 6 companies, control 96% of the world's media. And when you consider that other 4% is likely the majority of the alternative media and the internet, okay, that's a massively big 96%. And when you search a phrase maybe like, how many world banks do the Rothschilds family own or control, and look at what you find, then you might think about banking differently, because money is just an illusion. If you type that into YouTube, money is an illusion. There is a set of a few videos that will explain how fractional reserve banking, where basically they have only ever got a tiny fraction of the money available that they have loaned out or promised people, or that you've deposited with them, because they lend out more than is given to them. Thus meaning if every person went and demanded every penny of their money, the banking system will collapse immediately because they've lent out more money than they've got in. That's not a conspiracy theory, that's what fractional reserve banking, that's a simplified explanation, is. But type in money is an illusion into YouTube. The rabbit hole is truly massive. As you'll realise when this broadcast is finished and you watch video 1 below it and take notes of the dates, places, times, facts and phrases I tell you to search in Google. So, a couple of other books, and this is where we're going to get into the ground of people thinking, ooh, 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 ooh. But that is why I encourage you, if you've just joined us, you need to watch part 1 of this video first, okay? Before you come to that decision of cuckoo, okay? Because you need to take the names, dates, places I say. You need to take the phrases I say, put them in Google, independently verify the truth of what I've said in the first video for yourself, to then realise there is credibility in the fact that I have infiltrated journalists, I have worked as an undercover journalist in the past, I have infiltrated the newspapers and the media, and I have seen from the inside how there is little to no truth in the vast majority of news stories. And when there is, it's generally manipulated to someone's political or financial agenda, as we mentioned earlier. Most people are just closed-minded to all this. Yep, there they are. Got it wrote down so I don't forget anything. The 3 final documents that are really worth looking at. There's tons of stuff out there, but I'm trying to keep it so you don't have to read that much, because otherwise you could get bogged down in way too much stuff. If you watch video number 1, take notes of the stuff I've said and the phrases I've said and put them into Google and do your own research and use your own common sense, okay, and your own perception of reality, you'll arrive at your own conclusions. That's all I'm recommending you do. I'm not saying that you should end up agreeing with me. No, I'm not. I'm just saying make your own decisions based on the evidence that's there that I pointed you towards. So do look at untoldmurder.com. Do look at all those sites that I told you about earlier. Do read, or reread if you read it at school, 1984 by George Orwell. And do read Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And even though they're works of fiction, ask yourself, isn't it a weird coincidence that 2 books, but remember that Aldous Huxley taught George Orwell French at the Eton Boys' School, Eton being where David Cameron, I think he was a pupil there, he may not have been, but if you search Eton Boys' School politicians, you'll get the point I was making, that a lot of powerful people went there, people who are part of the agenda, okay, to brainwash, control and manipulate the mass populace, people like you and me, if we don't open our eyes and look at the much bigger picture. Following on from that, I am going to mention David Icke in a minute, and people are going to go, that nutter, the man who thinks that the royal family are reptiles and shape-shifting reptiles. I would say just push that one to the side just for a minute, okay? Don't let one thing that sounds really out there and bizarre and way over the top cloud you from looking at the very real fact that a massive amount of stuff that David put into print in 1999 in a book called The Biggest Secret, okay, has become fact and reality in our world. A massive amount of stuff that David Icke published in the book The Biggest Secret in 1999 has proven itself to become reality and fact around the world. And not only that, it's happened quite often within the timescales he said it would do so. And even now, today, this week, stuff's happened this week that in that book, The Biggest Secret, he predicts would happen and roughly on the correct timescale. He's got a massive track record of getting things right. In that book in 1999, he also names and shames paedophile MPs and politicians and celebrities who have since been found to be guilty. I cannot encourage you enough to read the book The Biggest Secret by David Icke, published in 1999. Read it with an open mind, but then do exactly as I told you to do in video number 1. Check out the contents for yourself. Don't believe them blindly, but also don't disbelieve them blindly. If something seems a little bit nutcasey, still take the time to go on Google, search it and find some other independent resources. There'll be plenty for and there'll be plenty against as well. Weigh them up for yourself. Use your own common sense based on multiple sources and come to your own decisions. That is all I would recommend, okay? But that book, in conjunction with one other called The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality, which was written by John Hamer, first name John, and second name Hamer, Hamer, and was published in 2012, and it's called The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality. That will, whereas David Icke's thing puts loads of stuff together and puts the jigsaw together for you, The Falsification of History will give you an overview of stuff that David Icke goes into much more great depth about, but it will also go into lots of other areas of history and show you how that phrase, history is written by the winner or the victor, is very true indeed. And when you dig deeper, you find that a lot of what we're taught in schools is indeed indoctrination and has little, if any, true basis in reality and fact. But I encourage you to get those books and do your own investigation and check for yourself. This one's highly controversial. You might be able to buy a printed copy, I don't know. But you can definitely get the PDF online for free and then print it out. I tell you in advance, the vast majority of people believe this document to be a forgery, a fake and a fraud. However, that's irrelevant to the point I'm about to make. Bear that in mind. It's irrelevant to what I'm about to say, the fact that the majority of people believe this document to be a fake, a fraud, forgery and a fraud. The document in question is called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Elders being E-L-D-E-R-S and Zion being Z-I-O-N. It was first published in 1903, and it is alleged by some people that this is a document put together by Zionist Jews as a plan for world domination and a new world order, and to take control of the world and end up with a one world bank, a one world currency, a one world political system, a one world bloody everything, one world army and whatnot. As I said, the vast majority of people say it's a fake, a fraud and a counterfeit, and that there's no truth in it coming from anyone in any real position of power. But that's irrelevant to this question I want you to ask yourself. People do agree that it was first published in 1903. We're now in 2016. If you download this and print it out, irrelevant to the fact it may have been a fake, a fraud and a counterfeit, okay, push that issue aside. What we do know is it was published in 1903. Read it and look at what is planned to happen in the 1920s, the 40s, the 60s, the 80s in that document. And ask yourself, well, if it is a fake, a fraud and a counterfeit, what a bloody massive coincidence it is that all these things have unfolded in history. That so many of them have occurred, and have occurred even in the past week and are continuing to occur, and then that perhaps will take you back to Google to start searching more and opening your mind to the idea that, you know what, perhaps I really should have another reread of The Biggest Secret by David Icke, and also a reread of The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality by John Hamer. It truly does to me. I don't believe in coincidences the majority of the time, but this certainly seems too much of a coincidence to me that Aldous Huxley taught George Orwell French at Eton Boys' School, where lots of powerful people that help control the agenda, brainwash the public and manipulate and control the public went to school. It seems too much of a coincidence to me that both of them wrote books, namely Brave New World by Aldous Huxley and 1984 by George Orwell, that if you read them, you look at them and you bear in mind they were written in 1922 and 1949 respectively, okay, and bear them in mind in conjunction with that, we'll call it the fake, fraudulent, counterfeit document, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, published in 1903. Read all three of them. See the similarities. Ask yourself then, what has happened in history since the dates of publication of those things? Ask yourself, can there be that many coincidences in the world? Then look at The Biggest Secret by David Icke, published in 1999, and ask yourself, is he really that lucky to have got so many names right of political MP and celebrity paedophiles that were later charged or found to be guilty or named as such? Is he really just coincidentally that lucky that so many things he put in print 17 years ago, 16, 17, nearly 18 years ago now, in 1999, have actually happened, and quite often in the timescale he said, and are continuing to happen as we speak. So yeah, I'm really not sure that I believe that the royal family are shape-shifting lizards. What I do believe is this, look, that we all have a reptilian brain. That's true. Look into it, reptilian brain. And that psychopaths display the same kind of personality traits, or rather lack of them, as many lizards do. That's a coincidence. And, oh, you know what? Do some searches on the phrase, Princess Diana said they were not human, or Princess Diana said they are not human in relation to the royal family. I know that one's a bit too far out there, even for my own liking, but don't let one rotten egg, one possibly ridiculous ingredient, one tiny element of The Biggest Secret by David Icke, book from 1999, stop you from reading the rest of the book and proving to yourself. In fact, read it with, if you want, if you think, David Icke, what a nutter, get the book, The Biggest Secret, published in 1999, and read it with the intention of proving how wrong he is. Because if you're so sure, as a human being, that what the mass media and governments are telling you is true, and that there isn't a hidden political, financial, mind control and population control, search government population control, that's an interesting one. What they would call population control, okay, we would probably call genocide and murder. What they would call collateral damage, we would call probably genocide or murder. And let me just get one thing clear before you do read any stuff on the internet. There are some people out there who've misunderstood the term false flag, as in a false flag event, okay? This does not mean, and any sane individual who knows what they're talking about should not be using that in terms of trying to make out that nobody was ever hurt in a terrorist attack, for example. False flag merely means, or should mean, is meant by those who are responsible at trying to spread the truth, that a false flag is an event that happens where what the media reports and governments say in terms of who is responsible, upon closer investigation, doesn't stand up to logical examination, and with deeper investigation you can find evidence against who the media tend to say or governments say is responsible as not being. You know, a recent example only this week is that they've released 24 pages, is it, off the top of my head, from and until yesterday or the day before, classified 9/11 Twin Towers terrorist document. They've declassified some pages, and those, if you type in 9/11 declassified document and July 2016, you'll find quotes of them online. If you go on YouTube alone, type in, for example, 9/11 declassified documents bribery, you'll see how it implicates people into having been bribed. And just let me find the... I'm back. It warned me to put the power leading, because the battery's low. We're getting close to the end anyway. But yeah, it if you search, you'll see how it involved bribery and corruption. Look at it, search for it yourself, see, and you'll see even this week stuff just come out now into the public domain that backs up the fact that, you know, at the end of the day, those people say 9/11 was an inside job are not conspiracy nut jobs. After all, evidence is coming out there that's unquestionable, even this week. And I encourage you to go, open your mind and look. You don't have to agree with me, I don't want to. The world's great with people having differences of opinion. It certainly is. But at least don't you owe it to yourself to explore the possibility that you've been lied to by the media, lied to by governments. Oh, for Christ's sake. I mean, do you know what? Most of the mainstream media, which in England, for example, is Rupert Murdoch owned in the main, who really did all he could during the general election 2015 to help ensure that David Cameron got in. David Cameron, who used to have, who had a fling, an affair with Rebecca Brooks, who runs the Sun newspaper now in England. Interestingly, search on Google, you'll see this to be true. The thing is, if you look, you'll see that it was very much arguably, as a lot of elections are, election by media in England in 2015. In fact, if you type in the phrase, I've got it wrote down here, if you type in the phrase, was the 2015 general election rigged? And then next to it, my stage name, Jonathan Royles. So, was the general election 2015 rigged? Jonathan Royles, WordPress. Type all that into the Google search box. Was the general election 2015 rigged? Jonathan Royles, WordPress. You'll get my blog page that I did at the time. Well, it says it all. And check it out in conjunction with what I say in video 1 about media being owned by a small group of families worldwide, banks being owned by a small group of people worldwide, and that the banks, basically the people with the money, control what the media print and what governments end up doing. An example is Baron M.A. Rothschild of the banking family once said, "Give me control over a nation's currency and I care not who makes its laws." In other words, if you've got control of the money, you've got control of the people, because you can control the newspapers, the government, everything. You need to look into it. You need to open your mind. You owe it to yourself. And ask yourself this, why have more mainstream media not reported the Tory election fraud? Okay, it's started to come out in the past couple of months, but it's been going on and reported by the alternative media much earlier and on a much bigger scale. You know, as it stands right now, I think it's 27 off the top of my head, it could be 26, but we'll say 26 or 27. Tory MPs who got elected are being investigated for election fraud that, if their expenses fraud is proven and their charge, could invalidate that voting result, which would mean if enough of those were invalidated, it would ultimately affect the big result, which would mean possibly at the moment of this video broadcast, it's possible if enough of those who have been questioned and possibly could face charges for Tory election fraud were to be charged and convicted of or found guilty of such, then it could end up meaning that David Cameron was fraudulently elected and should never have been in, which would raise a very interesting questions about the EU referendum as well. But hey, that was just, you're better off out. Or at least that's the decision you'd come to if you read The Biggest Secret by David Icke, published in 1999. If you open your mind to the fact that the plan has always been for a one world government, one world banking institute, one world currency, a one world army, so that it's easier to control everyone. Before I start sounding too much like a complete lunatic, which will sound the case if you've not yet watched video 1, because if you haven't, as soon as I finish, watch video number 1, that will be underneath this on this page or on this group or on this profile, and take notes of the dates, places, times, the names of books, and the phrases I say to search in Google, and investigate for yourself. Check for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Don't even take the word of it of the people whose books I've said. Yes, read The Biggest Secret by David Icke, but then independently investigate what he says and check out for yourself and find that it does check out to be truthful. Check for yourself. Don't just blindly believe what you read in the newspapers, see on TV, hear on the radio, or whatnot. Independently check it from numerous different sources and always ask yourself the question, who stands to benefit most from the outcome of this the way it's being reported, or the way the governments are saying they would advise people to act. What is the end game? How does it benefit them? Because sure as hell, the only person that you can rely on totally is you and the people that you totally love and trust. So, if you're not on facebook.com/Alex the Hypnotist, go to that, because that's where I'll be answering questions and looking at comments under the videos in a moment, briefly, to answer questions. If you're on any of the pages or groups, then I won't see it, so there you go. But the simple fact is this: none of what I've said, I don't want you to believe any of it without independently checking it yourself. So look at the video number 1, re-watch this video, take notes, search Google, buy the books, they're cheap on Amazon, you can buy them second hand, you don't need new ones, read them, and then independently check what's in there. Actually re-educate yourself and discover, as I know you will if you actually take the time to read those books, that the majority of what you were taught about what's going on in the world, i.e. so-called history, has been falsified and distorted massively, as you will find out in The Falsification of History, Our Distorted Reality by John Hamer, and that what you were told by governments and newspapers is generally what the people with all the money and the real power want you to believe, because there's something in it for them, as we said in video 1. Just do an exercise and search Rupert Murdoch, oil, Golan Heights, and then ask yourself why he may have been, you know, so heavily helping to publish stories through his media to get the mass populace to become more amenable to the idea of airstrikes or war in certain countries. Just look at, you know, look at the bigger picture. You owe it to yourself and to your clients if you're in the hypnotherapy industry, because when you realise that each and every one of us, the mass populace from birth, are indoctrinated by school to obey authority figures, to believe what we're taught, to aim for a life where success is gauged by doing an exam and getting a piece of paper, rather than by results out there in the real world doing something. Where we're brought up in a world where religions have caused so many wars, and and yet there's so much evidence out there that there's no, religions based on magic tricks, but Jesus at best was a bloody good street magician and a hypnotist. And that's something I cover in depth, because every week on hypnosisweek.com I have an offer of the week, and this week's offer is my massive package, multimedia digital package, The Bible, God and Hypnotism Exposed, within which I not only expose pretty much the truth behind all religions, not just the Bible, I cover all religious texts in that package, and I cover how miracles are truly worked through the power of suggestion and hypnosis, and how people are controlled through indoctrination, social conditioning, social engineering, and what might be argued as waking hypnosis. I cover that in depth in the package as well. I even cover in depth how the media is involved in this. Now it all ties together, and that package is available for less than $10. I think it's $9.97, which is about £7 sterling. It's the price of a coffee and a muffin in Costa Coffee, Starbucks, or Costa, Starbucks, or Caffè Nero, wherever you go. It's a minimal investment that will truly blow your mind, but it will also give you some techniques to use with your clients. There's also stuff in there that's related back to helping clients in hypnotherapy or becoming a better stage hypnotist, as well as making you more open to what's going on in the world, and being able to protect yourself from the brainwashing, social conditioning and social engineering that's going on around each and every one of us every day. I'm just looking at these comments on here. Dave Stretch, power to the free thinkers, very educational, awesome, thank you Dave Stretch. Roy Brownlaw, party political broadcast by the Alex Party, laugh out loud. It is indeed laugh out loud, because I'll just say again, I don't want anyone to believe a single word I've said on this video or the other video without going through them again, taking notes of the dates, names, places and facts, taking notes of the phrases I said and searching them in Google, and also reading the books that I've mentioned, and then independently verifying the truth of them for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Look properly. I'm now just looking at the close up here. I'm just looking, checking under there, because sometimes what I see on here are different than what I see. Phil Taylor says, laugh out loud, what you're spinning. What I'm spinning, Phil, is the truth as I see it, based on the cast iron evidence and facts that are in this video and the previous video, and at the links you'll find by searching the phrases, dates, names and such not that I mentioned to you, and tell you to search and independently check for yourself. And do it, if you want, with the idea of trying to prove me wrong. Get Davey Knight's book, The Biggest Secret, published in 1999, with the idea of proving me wrong and proving that he didn't publish the names of MP and celebrity paedophiles. Get that book with the idea of proving to me that he didn't publish in advance what was going to happen in regards to the big fight over the EU and what's really going on in the EU that's now starting to become the public knowledge and has started to leak out in mainstream media that, you know what, they actually want a one world system, as it were. Try and prove me wrong if you think I'm a nutjob, but then realise that the evidence can't. The evidence, if you check it out, speaks for itself. It's just you're not going to find that evidence reported by the mainstream media, because guess what? They're owned by the same few families as are the banks that control the media, the governments, and therefore want to brainwash you. So, yeah, it doesn't seem like... If there are any questions, if anyone's just arrived on any of the pages or profiles, remember, I can only see questions live at facebook.com/Alex the Hypnotist, AlexTheHypnotist. Other than that, below this video will be part 1, which you really do need to watch if you've only just joined us. But I have a notepad and a pen ready to take notes of the names of the books, the names of the documents, and the names of the websites or the phrases you will need to search to either prove to yourself that what you suspected is true, or to prove to yourself, if you want, that everything I've said is untrue. But be warned that in the process of doing that, if you're open-minded and genuinely check out the evidence that you'll come across from various sources, apply common sense, ask yourself the question, who stands to benefit most from the outcome of this? I.e., is it the media? Is it the banks? Is it the government? You know? Then you will have no choice when you start that journey to realise that either A, you face up to the truth, or B, you continue to live in a state of cognitive dissonance, which essentially is the psychological state of mind. And I'm purposely turning on my computer here because I want a nice, short, concise... I'm going to read this. Cognitive dissonance. Okay, that's first word is C-O-G-N-I-T-I-V-E. Second word is D-I-S-S-O-N-A-N-C-E. That is the name of the psychological occurrence, feeling. This is why people get upset when you challenge what they hold most closely. When you challenge things that make them feel safe, i.e. their view of reality. The idea that perhaps what you read in the newspapers is true. No, it's not the majority of the time. The idea that what governments tell you is for your best interest. Most of the time it's not. It's for the best interest of the people with the most money, the people truly in powers. But it's a lot easier for people to think that there's just a whole bunch of conspiracy theory nutters out there. And there are, some are nutters. Some of the nutters are the ones, and they're easy to spot, they're the ones who think a false flag attack means nobody got hurt. That is not what it means. False flag means, by responsible truth seekers and spreaders, that it was an event that was most likely, when enough investigation is done, not perpetrated by the source or cause reported by the mainstream media or told to you by your government. And that there's something in it for them to gain, so it's part of their long-term plan. That's all it means. It doesn't mean people got hurt. Yes, that does mean innocent people get arguably murdered. There are some false flags where they use crisis actors, people who are acting and paid to act the part. Just search crisis actors on Google. I think it's the Boston Marathon's one where they had to come out after the event and admit it was a exercise. At first they tried to pass it off as real, and then when people realised the crisis actors used, they came out and went, actually no, it was actually just a exercise. So yeah, mental cognitive dissonance. This is why people get upset when you challenge what they hold most closely. Mental conflict that occurs when beliefs or assumptions are contradicted by new information, facts and evidence. The concept was introduced by the psychologist Leon Festinger, 1919 to 1989, he lived, in the late 1950s. He and later researchers showed that when confronted with challenging new information, most people seek to preserve their current understanding of the world and their beliefs by rejecting, explaining away, or avoiding the new information, or by trying to convince themselves that no conflict really exists. Cognitive dissonance is nonetheless considered an explanation for attitude change, blah blah blah. The point is, yes, it will be uncomfortable to realise that you've been manipulated, brainwashed all your life. We all have, including me. But when you wake up to it, you can start to see it happening. You can see who's truly, what's really going on. The string pulling that's going on, the social engineering, and you'll see in action the closest thing to hypnosis truly existing. The mass populace, arguably, is in a constant trance state. I'll leave you with that thought. Remember, watch video number 1 underneath this. Take notes, check everything out, read the books, check it out for yourself before you call me or anyone else a nutcase. Check out the stuff I've told you to look at and try and prove my conclusions wrong by looking at the same evidence, facts and sources that I've mentioned to you. Surely that would only be the fair and right thing to do. And guess what? You will benefit, and along the way you will become a better hypnotist as well, because you'll learn from that process. And in that regard, I'll just say one more time, if you go to hypnosisweek.com, that the offer of the week, if you click on Hypnosis Week offer of the week, or you go to hypnosisweek.co.uk, you can get The Bible, God and Hypnotism multimedia package, teaching the truth about use of hypnosis in every religion in the world, and also how it's used in the media, how it all ties together for mass social conditioning and brainwashing. And you can get all of that for less than $10 for the next 7 days only, because obviously next Sunday when we go live on Hypnosis Week at 9 PM UK time, 2100 hours British summer time, which is 4 PM Eastern time America and 1 PM Pacific America, we will have a new offer of the week. For now, my name's Alex William Smith, aka Jonathan Royle. Watch video number 1. I will ensure, hopefully, if I can download the videos, might not work because it said it had an error before, but if I can, I'll end up with them on YouTube, and then I'll post tomorrow on my profile a link to them, or you'll be able to search on YouTube for them by searching for Hypnosis Week 3. No, actually, Hypnosis Week 4, because Week 1 was Hypnosis Does Not Exist, if you search that on YouTube. Week 2 was Suggestibility Tests. Week 3 was Hypnosis Refreshers. This is Week 4, so if you search Hypnosis Week 4 on YouTube, by tomorrow you should find both videos together. And next week, which will be Hypnosis Week, Week 5, will be Rapid and Instant Hypnotic Induction Techniques. Thank you for your time. Good night.